presentation is from Warren Black. A number of you may have also been following Warren and myself in some webinars which we've had over the last couple of weeks leading up to this conference, and they serve by way of introduction to Warren's presentation today.
Well, thank you very much for having me today. Quite a few would have sat in the earlier session where I sort of gave the preamble to what I want to talk about today. I'm involved in a research program at the Queensland University of Technology where we're trying to actually understand how complexity influences risk. More specifically, we're trying to understand what qualifies as scientifically valid risk management in highly complex delivery environments. So the next question is, well, why bother? Why is this important? And I'll tell you as soon as I can get that. Okay, there we go, just testing that's all working. So, as I said earlier, projects globally are not getting any simpler. They're getting more and more complex. And as you can see by that exponential curve in the tallest buildings over the last 100 years, the question we've got to ask ourselves is, has risk management increased at that same exponential growth? As projects have got more complex, has risk management actually responded? And the answer is probably no, because the last innovative thing that we ever did in risk management was invent the Monte Carlo analysis. That's almost 50 years ago now. So the next question we've got to ask ourselves, are modern projects actually adopting risk management practices that reflect Fortune 500 companies? Because the top projects that we now see are actually equivalent of a Fortune 500 company. In fact, in the last 10 years as such, we've had 7 projects alone that would qualify as a Fortune 500 company. Now, when you consider that those companies have internal auditors, external auditors, enterprise resource, ERM professionals within them, and a fully functional risk capability, are projects adopting the same amount of risk resources? Probably not. I've worked in a $30 billion project environment where they had a software manager and a person managing risk registers, 2 people for $30 billion worth of investment. So that's another challenge. Are we bringing in risk capability that actually reflects the degree of investment at risk? And again, the answer is no. Which brings us to the next thing. If you go look at all the literature, read the journals, read the articles, you will see that the journals overwhelmingly support the view that complex projects are more likely to fail than succeed. And you can go through the numerous databases out there, from Ben Flyberg of Oxford to Ed Merrow's IPA database, Gartner Analytics, we heard earlier today, Grattan Institute's research into this, and even some of the big fours. They've all done their research, and the same message keeps coming back over and over and over again, that complex projects are more likely to fail to meet their objectives than to succeed. Now, why is that? And this is where my research comes in. The unfortunate reality is this, all right? If risk management is meant to help a project succeed, then risk management, as we are currently practicing it, is not working within projects of advanced complexity. New thinking and methods are required. I'm sorry, folks, argue any way you want, but if that is true, then that is true. There's no way around it. So we need new thinking. And this is where people like me come in. We're trying to understand what do the complexity sciences actually have to say about risk management, in particular, complex systems theory. That's probably where a lot of the engineering stuff probably sits, right? So if projects are getting more and more complex, let's look at the complexity sciences. What do they actually have to say about risk management in highly complex environments? And this is where my research comes in. So I'm going to introduce you to some of our research and some of the findings that we've come in. I want to spend more time with the findings, so I'm going to rush through the upfront stuff because it's just a bit of theory to position you so you know what we're talking about. But the key value of today, I think we're talking about the practical application. So what is a complex system? Simplest definition, it's an entity comprising of an advanced number of interconnected contributing parts. There are natural complex systems like the weather, a human brain, etc. And there are man-made complex systems, an economy, a major project, global organization. Now, we've been studying natural complex systems since the beginning of time. It's only the last 30 years or so that we started to try and bring some of those learnings across to the management sciences. We can understand how natural complex systems behave and what works there. We can do the same in a project or a major organization. So there are a lot of people looking at this, not just in risk management, but in leadership, procurement, supply chain management, project management, so on and so on. So the complexity science is growing momentum more and more because the world is only getting more complex. So just to understand what we're working with, I've developed a complex systems maturity scale just to explain the differences between complexity. So at the lowest end of complexity, we might have what we call a simple obvious system. A good old-fashioned construction brick is a good example. It's got weights, it's got dimension, but that's about it. There's nothing more complex than that. Throw a few hundred or thousand of bricks together, and all of a sudden you've got what you might call a rational ordered system. It's a repeatable pattern, same basic component, it's still construction bricks, but now it's a repeatable pattern of many construction bricks. Now it's a wall, now it has function and purpose. The Great Wall of China is 2,000 kilometers of a repeatable pattern over and over again. Throw a few million bricks together, and all of a sudden you have what is known as a complex physical system, like a castle. Still made of bricks, but the fundamental difference between a complex system and a simple system is that complex systems are dependent on other supporting systems. So for example, the castle is dependent on the ventilation system, the plumbing system, the air conditioning, and all the systems that make it functional. So that is the difference between a complex system and a simple system. Throw a few billion bricks together, and all of a sudden you have what is known as a complex adaptive system, or as they call it in science, CASs, right? And these systems are highly energized systems that are continually transitioning. A city is a really good example. It's still made from construction bricks, but it has personality, it has behavior. It is continually generating new buildings, new roads, new streets, old buildings get knocked down, new neighborhoods coming, new systems, multiple supporting systems continually just transitioning with each other. And because of this, CASs are unique. They have specific personality and behavior. Take, for example, cities. Despite the fact that all the cities in the world have the same stuff, Sydney is not the same as London, which is not the same as Istanbul or any other city. Every city is contextually unique. And this is a key learning for project management, because projects are complex adaptive systems. They are scientifically valid complex adaptive systems. That means every project is unique, which also means every project needs a contextually relevant solution. What works in one project is not guaranteed to work in another. And this is a problem for risk management, because risk management continues to push a one-size-fits-all approach, a standardized compliance approach to risk management. So one of the key learnings that we've got is that as complexity increases, your risk management solutions have to adapt accordingly. All right, so complex systems theory is a particular area of the complexity sciences. It's where I'm putting my PhD, trying to understand. And what I want to do is I want to share my research journey with you, because then you'll understand the learnings that are coming out of it, and then you can rationalize how you apply it in your own particular environment. So we set out about 4 years ago to actually get an understanding of what happens if we take the best of complexity management, project management, and risk management and combine them together. Because where that sweet spot sits, where they all intersect, surely that is the answer of what qualifies as scientifically valid complex project risk management. If you can combine the best of all of that, that surely is the sweet spot of what the future of risk management should look like in a complex project. So we started off by reviewing all the case studies, the existing literature, the existing thinking in those areas, and we started a research journey. And as you go, you learn a couple of things. When you compare the complexity and project management literature, you learn that projects are scientifically valid complex systems. Therefore, complexity science has a valid means of controlling a project. You then learn, when you compare the project and the risk literature, that complex projects fail at a rate of about 70%, implying that existing risk methods are impaired. Another key learning. And if you keep going and you compare the risk and the complexity literature, you learn that complexity theory and risk theory do not always align. In fact, at times they are diametrically opposed. That is a key learning. All right? There's a lot of commonality between the two, don't get me wrong, but simplest obstruction between the two. Conventional risk methods tell us that all risks can be identified, measured, and treated in a step-by-step linear process. Complexity science says no. All right? Every situation is unique. Complex systems are highly unpredictable and irrational. Therefore, the chances of predicting when, where, how, and at what magnitude the next risk is going to happen is almost zero. That's a fundamental difference in philosophy. One looks at managing relationships, one looks at managing uncertainty. So which one are you going to bank on if you need to manage a complex project? Is it going to be conventional risk management or complex systems thinking? So you see, it's an interesting concept. And this is what we're looking at. We're trying to understand what complex systems thinking has to say about valid risk management methods. So the way we went about it is, as I said, we went and reviewed all the existing data that we can get our hands on, literature, case studies. We did a whole round of senior interviews with project directors to get their views of this. And we took all this data and put it into a data management file. And we started doing what's known as thematic analysis, where you start actually looking for the themes that come out of these things. What is the literature consistently telling us? And over these 200 sources, these little word bubbles are a good example of how you might do thematic analysis, but there are other ways to do it. And what we started learning is that there were a number of word clusters that kept coming out, what we call control agent clusters, the same themes coming out over and over again. Key things for controlling complex project risk: governance, appetite, planning, control, assurance, culture. These kept coming out over and over again. Almost all our findings could be brought back to one or two of these clusters. So we started researching this a little bit more. And what we learned was the following. Conventional risk management tells us that risk management is a simple four-step process. Identify the risk, measure the risk, treat the risk, review it, come back and start again. That is echoed in every risk management standard out there. ISO 31000, PMBOK risk, Prince 2 risk, Cobalt risk, they all say the same thing. That is the conventional risk method. But have you ever wondered what the control system supporting that needs to look like in order for that to work? And this is what we discovered. First of all, in order to identify risk, you need a series of valid project control systems. This is your cost scheduling estimate. These are the systems that exist within a project that help us to identify risk. So if that's not working properly, you're not going to identify the risk that you need to. But once you've identified the risk, now you need a decision-making capability to make a decision around the risk. There's no point in identifying the risk if nobody's going to make a decision about it. Because at the end of the day, risk management is about having risk-informed decision-making. So now, not only do you need project control systems, you also need a governance framework. But then you read some more and you learn that decision-making is actually a biased entity. It is persuaded by both the project and organization's appetite for risk-taking and the cultural influences of the environment. So when a person makes a decision in a project, they are biased by the appetites of the project as well as the cultural influences. So in order to make a valid decision around how we mitigate a risk, that simple system has to exist. If it doesn't exist, you can't make a risk management decision, right? Then you read some more. What you actually learn is that once a decision is made, you need a risk planning framework in order to make plans to mitigate the risk. Then you need a control assurance framework for somebody to test that those plans are valid and they're actually working. And if you follow the story over and over again, what you actually learn is that in order for that four-step process to work, you need a fully integrated system of risk management control. If any of those controls are missing or immature or weak or not working, you cannot get that four-step process to work in a highly complex project environment. And this is a critical learning because almost all our risk management literature tells us how to implement that four steps, but none of our project risk management literature puts enough emphasis on maturing the control framework that needs to be in place in order for that to work. So the first key learning that I want to discuss with you today is this concept that if risk management is to survive in highly complex projects, then complex projects need to adopt an integrated control system approach to risk management. In the same way that a complex orchestra cannot produce Mozart if the violinist section is missing, or for you engine redheads, the same way that a V12 engine cannot produce 700 horses of power if the carburetor is missing or is dirty, a complex risk management system cannot mitigate risks if any one of those controls are missing or impaired. So one of the first things we need to start doing in complex projects is when we develop a risk management plan is describe how that relationship of controls is going to work. How is project control systems going to work? What control systems are going to work? Where are we going to get the risk? How are we going to identify? How's the decision-making framework going to work? What's the governance structure? How are we going to promote a positive culture? How are we going to promote a positive appetite for risk-taking, et cetera, et cetera? If any of that is missing, your control framework is more than likely impaired, which means complex systemic risk can then emerge. This is a key learning because, as I said, conventional methods of risk management don't talk about the control framework that has to be in place in order for that four-step process to work. So what I've just shown you is the research journey to one learning. Unfortunately, I don't have the time to show you the research journey to others. All I can do is share the learnings with you, and hopefully you can go out there and actually try and adopt them in your own world. So on the back of that, what we actually developed from that control system was a theoretical integrated control system for controlling. The idea being is that we're now advocating that if you're working in a complex project environment, you want to build a risk management solution, a risk management framework. That's the basic exoskeleton. You need to explain how all of those are going to work and how all of them are going to interact and actually contribute to good risk management, because those are the controls that are required in order for good risk management to exist. So that was one learning. And so some more practical research learnings which you can take out there. The next one is something we touched on a little bit earlier. Complex projects require contextually appropriate, in other words, scalable risk control solution. A lot of organizations are getting this concept of scalable project delivery right. They're starting to develop various tiers that our simple projects will be delivered with this set of rules, our complex projects like this, our complicated projects, and even our highly complex will be delivered. And they have 4 tiers that they will deliver project. But unfortunately, most of them are designed on the size of the project, and that's not the purest indicator. What we need to do is look at the specific complexity of a project. The way we deliver a simple project is not the same as the way we deliver a control project, and for that reason, the risk control solutions have to differ. This comes up over and over again in the risk management literature in complexity sciences, is that every problem needs a contextually relevant solution. That is complexity management. So what we did is we developed a theoretical model that people can use to determine for themselves what their 4 scales should look like in terms of risk control solution A, B, C, and D. And basically what we're saying is, if you look at the top line, as relative state of complexity increases from a simple obvious system to a complex adaptive system, the nature of the project will increase, the environmental uncertainty will increase, the nature of the risks will increase, and the types of risks to be considered will differ. Therefore, your control solutions should change accordingly. And what we're saying is, you see those 3 different colored bands in there. Each of them is a particular type of risk management, and the total blend is what your particular control would look like. So for example, control solution A, which is in the simple projects where you are considering things like weather delays and skills availability, that is going to rely more on risk assessments, risk registers, audits, health checks, project assurance, simple type risk management. But then by the time you get to the other side, to control solution D, where projects are highly complex, highly adaptive, highly energized, highly transitional, risk registers don't work. There's no time to measure risk when they're just happening on a day basis. So now all of a sudden, we have to move towards risk control methods that can control system outcomes. Things like project-wide intelligence, control maturity, capability, integration, resilience, responsiveness, and agility. These are better methods of controlling risk than risk registers and health checks, for example. So what we're advocating is that every organization should have a model like this, their own personal model. You can start with this one. This is just theoretical to give an example of what it should look like. But if you work in a PMO, a portfolio environment, an environment where there are multiple projects of different types, nature, and complexity, you need something like this. Because if you're adopting a one-size-fits-all approach to risk management, your risk management framework is vulnerable in highly complex environments. Fit for purpose and contextually relevant risk solutions, and that is what this is trying to demonstrate. You've got to work out for yourself exactly how you do that, but this is a starting point just to give you an idea. All right, number 3, complex projects require complexity diagnostics to better understand specific areas of stress. So diagnostics have been around for a while. There are a number of commercially available ones out there. Even I've worked with organizations to build their own specific one. But if you want to determine which one of those bands is your project in, you need an assessment tool of some sort. In its simplest form, it's a questionnaire of something that gives you options on any particular metric, and how you answer those options will then give you a scoring rate or determine the band and will tell you which tier you sit in. A lot of engineering firms are starting to take this on board. I'm aware of a number of publicly funded PMOs that actually have something like this. I would encourage every organization to develop your own complexity diagnostic. Work out the things in your organization that create complexity, rate them on a scale of 1 to 4, and depending on how you answer will determine whether your project is tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, or tier 4. And for each of those tiers, a different control solution is required. A lot of people are doing this, and this is the way I believe risk management will go. It will become scalable. It will either scale up or scale down as the complexity of the project actually reaches. And then the last one is complex projects need to review their complexity at all key decision-making point. So this is a simple one as well. This is actually a piece of work I did for a rail portfolio down in Victoria. And essentially what they wanted to work out is at what point in the project delivery or the asset delivery life cycle should we be considering complexity. So what we did is we got all the project delivery and asset delivery teams in the room, and we spent a couple of weeks running workshops, and we came up with something like this. Is a simplified version of it, but essentially it's your key whole of life cycle, all the key activities that have to happen from start to end within the project delivery environment where decisions need to get made. And then what we did was we highlighted in green and orange. The green ones are just key investment decisions. The orange ones are go, no go. In other words, we either stay where we are or we move forward. And what we then did was we had made sure that at each of those key decision-making points, they went and did a complexity diagnostic. That one there, that Excel spreadsheet, that's the actual diagnostic we built. Text is too small, so you won't be able to read it, but you get the idea. They then rate 30 metrics on a scale of 1 to 4. That determines whether they are control solution A, B, C, or D. And then they scale their risk management efforts up or down depending on the answer. So now what you have is scalable risk management. If you don't have scalable risk management, the chances are you're either over-resourcing or under-resourcing your risk management efforts. And that's what this is trying to do, is regular points in the project delivery is Take time to assess the complexity and then scale it up or scale it down depending on what the complexity is. We cannot have a one-size-fits-all approach to project risk management. So that's 4 simple examples of where we have brought complex systems thinking into risk management. And all of you can do this within your organization. If you're in a PMO environment, a large program of work, or work with multiple projects in a portfolio, and you don't have this, I'm sorry to tell you, chances are your risk management framework is vulnerable. It's compromised because you're not doing the things that are required to manage complexity. Get this, folks. In complex projects, complexity management is risk management. By stabilizing or reducing the complexity, you reduce the potential for unwanted emergent risks to pop up in areas of high complexity. So part of what we do as risk management in complex project environments cannot just be about identifying specific risk scenarios, then measuring them and documenting them, and it also has to be about identifying the specific complexities in play and finding ways to unpack and reduce that complexity. That is risk management in complex projects. So, to close, what are the key learnings of today? The first one, and it's hard to accept that this is true, conventional risk methods do not appear to be helping highly complex projects to succeed. A 70% failure rate tells us this. You heard a number of presentations today talking about the industry benchmark for complex projects is 30% overrun and I think 40% schedule overrun. That's tough. Conventional risk management is not working, all right? Projects are scientifically valid complex systems, thus complex systems theory potentially offers a more valid lens upon which to look at improving complex project risk management. So I encourage all of you, start reading the literature. Read the complexities out, read systems thinking, read resilience theory, chaos theory. Start reading what the complexity scientists have to say about management control, and you will be startled at how much similarity and conflicts, and where there are conflicts, you've got to learn, between conventional risk management and complexity management. And then lastly, tough one, but it's true too. Complex projects which do not adapt systems thinking approaches to risk management are potentially vulnerable to complex system-driven risk. You cannot manage complex system-driven risks with conventional risk methods. The literature is showing that over and over again. So we have to change. We have to move up to the next level. This is just a 20-minute presentation of some of the stuff we've done. If this stuff really interests you and you want to learn more, we run a website. Our research program runs a website. We have a little booklet which explains the research journey and all the key learning. As a risk professional, I think it's a great booklet. I wrote it, so I'm not just saying, I'm not saying that, but I can still read it today and actually think, why didn't people tell me this years ago? I'm not trying to push the project unnecessarily. Sorry, I'm not trying to push the book unnecessary. What I'm trying to tell you is, as a passionate risk professional, the stuff that we've discovered and have documented here is stuff you want to know. So if this interests you, buy the book. It's cheap as chips, and we'll post it off to you, and you too can see where we came up with these learnings. All right, thank you.